at the same time. And you just have to do the best you can and hope for the best. And when you look at the Olympics today, you see fantastic performances by very, very young people, as well as 50-year-old curling persons. So I guess the range is there. As far as I'm concerned, of course, I was then part of the 76 Games and also 1980 in Lake Placid, and the sport was luge. In addition to that, I've been fortunate, I guess, by also being a member of the board of directors of the Canadian Olympic Association for many years. So that gives me a chance to see the games from the inside. And it's an amazing machine that you actually put in place to be able to create these fantastic events, of course, that takes place worldwide. And you see the competition just to be able to get a city to get the games. I've had the chance to see, of course, what goes on in trying to win a city, such as being part of the 2002 committee for Quebec City that Salt Lake City won. So it has been a fantastic experience, and I feel privileged having been part of it, and have terrific friends to still come back and meet and talk to and discuss all the things that's going on.
So how did your team do during those two Olympics?
Well, when you go back to the 70s, in the Winter Games, you may recall the Russians and the East Germans and other nations being more professional than maybe athletes of amateur status. We were truly amateur status type of kids going down luge runs at 80 miles an hour. And we paid for most of the things ourselves to get there. This was before we saw enormous funding taking place that now, of course, is the game or the games. And so we didn't do maybe as well as we could or should. I was in the top 10 in the world, so I sort of felt good about my performance. And having been a Norwegian champion in luge 3 times, and Scandinavian Cup champion, Canadian champion, and North American champion on the 1932 Winter Olympic track in Lake Placid, gave me a chance to also really be at the high end of the sport, which is a lot of fun. So we always hoped that the East Germans or Russian or someone ahead of us would crash a couple of times and be disqualified. So by default, we would have bumped up a couple of points in the places in the final standing.
So what is it like to lose? I mean, it's obviously a very dangerous sport. How does somebody get into that? How did you get started with that?
Well, I got started back in Norway because in 1955, the first World Championships in luge was held in Oslo, Norway, where I'm from. So I was just a little boy, 13 years old, and saw this amazing event, and I thought, this would be fun to try. So I built myself my first little sled, interestingly enough, and became very much involved in Norway and in the hill outside or the run outside Oslo, and did quite quickly pretty well, and really took to the sport. And the whole excitement of going down a track at 80 miles an hour, and you zigzag at that sort of speed. The adrenaline rush is incredible. You're really, really quite out of it in some sense because you're so totally focused on getting down, do it right, and make it happen. And that's to be on the podium.
And the road to the Olympics, I mean, getting there is just quite an accomplishment to be able to be one of those chosen people.
That's true. And when you look at all the people participating in different sports, and you only have 2,500 athletes in Italy right now, it takes a long, hard road to get there. Dedication, the ability, of course. You have to have a natural ability to do it. But I think the important part, and maybe that's missing to some degree, you have to have fun. And I think most kids, when they start in any kind of sport, they do it because it's fun. And luge for me was fun. I'm a little bit lazy, I have to admit. So being a gravity sport, it's kind of nice because you just put yourself on the back on the sled, you push off, paddle a little bit to get going at it, and then you just lie there and have a terrific time for maybe 45, 50 seconds, and that's it. You look at other sports out there, hockey players and soccer players, they have to have game after game after game after game before you finally can make it. So we only had 4 quick runs over 2 days, and the best one would win. So that's sort of a little bit of a fun part of it, but you have to be very good at what you do. And of course, in Greece, you have the ability to experience speed, coordination, and a little bit of sheer guts. And some people call it other things as well, but at least we've been able to come out of it, and we can sit here and talk about it and look back at a fantastic event and experience that I have had, and some of my friends and other people as well.
All right, well, tell me a little bit about this cup that you all got started with this.
This cup comes from in 1976 games in Innsbruck, and it's called the Commodore Blues Cup. We used to be very closely related in spirit and training and so on with the British blues team. And we knew that because of the situation with East Germans and Russians and so on, we would not quite make it. So we wanted to have fun too. We wanted to be able to go back home and say, you won this thing, and make the game really worthwhile on a personal level, at the level that we were at. So Jeremy Palmer Tompkinson on the British team and I found this in Innsbruck at a jewelry store, set up the rules for how the game was going to be played. We took 3 members of each of the 2 teams, no substitutes, so if someone crashed, then too bad, you probably lost a chance to win this thing. And after 4 runs, unfortunately for us, the British team won it. But it was a little bit of a trick to get this to happen, because we have an official Olympic game in progress. And we wanted to have a game within the games, officially, at least to some point. So I asked for permission by the Olympic Committee if we can lower the flag, either the Canadian or a British flag, depending on who won. We asked for the soundtrack to come so they can have the music, national anthem being played. And after 2 days of discussing this internally, they came back and said, Bjorn, yes, you can do that. So we had then crates set up in front of us, and the British team came marching in, and I had a little speech about amateur sport, the true spirit of the Olympic Games, and that sort of thing. And then I handed over the cup to Jeremy and his team. The penalty, one thing is to win this thing, which is great. The penalty was that the losing team had to buy 2 very expensive bottles of champagne that we drank out of this cup. So the challenge was not only to get it, but not to pay for 2 bottles of champagne. So that was the kind of spirit that we had back then.
And the key for that too was the camaraderie between, within the Olympic Games of people from 2 different countries.
Absolutely. And this was actually quite well supported. So during the award ceremony for this cup, the Swedish Lewis team, the Americans, the Brits, of course, the Swedes, and other ones came, and we all sang out and saved the Queen. And it was very interesting that the whole Lewis community, to a great degree, thought this was really quite neat and unique to have this beside gold, silver, and bronze, of course, that some would win.
Do you think that now that these kinds of things are lost, that it's all about, not anything like this going on at this point? Does that kind of disappoint you?
I would be surprised, because if you now look at the Olympics in '76 as an example, it's an enormous event, and you have sponsorships, you have a lot of money on the table per se. Performance now has maybe taken a little bit of a business approach, and I use that word, from this sort of crazy, wild, let's go and have fun type of aspect of it. However, I suspect that among the athletes, and you look at the snowboard gang from the United States, and you all say, we are having a great time, this is fun, we enjoy this. So I suspect that they do something different, maybe, and the bottom line is they have a good time, and it's still fun, because that's the way it should be. Not just for the money, not just for the medals, not to be able to say I was the best of the best, but to say I really had a great time, because it's so special.
And for you, serving on the committee there in Canada, what's that like as far as the behind the scenes part of it? I mean, you've seen it from both sides.
Right.
What's that part like, and to see how everything comes to be?
The Olympic event is more than just what you see on television for a few days. It's an enormous organization. Very important, actually, politically to some degree, excuse me, though during the Olympic Games you really don't talk about the political aspect of it. But because you had a mix of athletes from all over the nations and all over the world, you end up discussing some of the elements of that when you have committee meetings. But typically we would talk about rules and regulations, talked about disqualification issues and so on and so forth, and how Canadians, and I'm sure the Americans do exactly the same, how we can plan to make it possible for the best athletes to show how good they are and really get there. So it's a lot of planning, a lot of consideration towards the athletic performance and support of the athletes. And that means money, facilities, the best coaching that needs to be taken care of, and the ongoing change and challenges by dealing with different nations worldwide in putting something like the Olympics together. So when you look at all the different elements of that, it's fascinating. And it's a very large organization, and it's much involved. And of course now we have the doping issues, and you have all those things that constantly comes in front of you. And we discuss that, of course, all the time, how to best deal with it. And a good friend of mine, Paul, he is now the president of the International Doping Committee. So it's interesting to see how all that works out.
Mm-hmm. What are your fondest memories of participating in the Olympics?
It must have been the opening ceremony of the 1980 Winter Olympic Games in Lake Placid. You may recall that just a month and a half prior to the Games, the Canadian ambassador to Iran had managed to assist in getting the last few American hostages free. So when our time came to walk in to the opening ceremony arena, you had to go over a little hill and then back in, and then there was the stadium. And as we came walking in with our parkas and all the rest of it, we got a standing ovation all the way around the whole arena. And I must have walked 10 inches off the ground. It was absolutely awesome to be able to participate and have the whole world say, thank you, Canada, in this case. This was fantastic. And I think that's the single most exciting, or should I say, emotional experience. The other one was the closing ceremony in Innsbruck in '76. We all sat inside the hockey arena, and on a big, big screen on the one wall, they had the Olympic flame projected. And as the game came to an end, you saw the flame just slowly shrink and shrink and shrink and shrink. And just before it snuffed out, they turned it on, and the microphone was next to it. So the whole arena was filled with this immense roar, and the flame was all over this big screen, and bang, it was gone. That was really quite emotional. I think most of us sat with tears in our eyes, realizing this was great, but it's time to go home.
So what is the true spirit of the Games? I mean, no matter where it is, no matter who's participating, what makes the Olympic Games what they are?
I think what you see in a very concentrated time frame, typically young athletes perform exceptionally well. But the most exciting part is that there are times you see surprises. Someone that was not slated to get an Olympic medal of any kind, but maybe walk away with a gold. You see personal challenges being overtaken, and we had the lady on the American team that fell, was in hospital, and 2 days later she goes down the track or the ski hill. It's like falling off the horse. You jump back to go back up again. And to be able to do that, you have to have incredible inner strength and the ability to say, I'm still here, I'm still okay, and I'll just go and do it. I think that's the exciting part of the Games. You really get to see exceptional performances, and typically very positive and exciting performances of athletes in doing the absolute best. And of course they do it best for themselves, but also for the nation and family and friends and all the support people they must have used over the years to get there.
Right, everybody has such a great sense of pride for their country and their work.
For sure. I don't know if you happened to watch the Games in Norway in 1994 from Lillehammer, but I think every Norwegian flag made was somehow displayed in front of television by people being out in the bushes and trails to see cross-country skiers and so on and so forth. So sure, it's very national in concept, and the nation that has the honor of hosting the team, of course, they have a little bit of an extra kick in that.